While everyone's been glued to the latest tariff drama and political circus in Washington, something quietly monumental is happening right here in Canada. Imagine this. Over 12,000 new jobs, entire factories rising in Ontario and Quebec, and Canada stepping into the spotlight as a global hub for fighter jet manufacturing. That's not a small deal. That's a transformation of the country's industrial and defense landscape. Think about it like this. While the world focuses on tweets and trade threats, Canada could be quietly building the future of its aerospace industry, creating tens of thousands of jobs and gaining technological independence. Factories buzzing with activity, engineers and technicians mastering cutting-edge systems, and small businesses across the country plugged into a sophisticated supply chain. This isn't just about planes. It's about Canada proving it can innovate, lead, and protect its own interests. And here's the question that frames everything. Can Canada finally assert itself, develop sovereign defense capabilities, and send a clear message to the United States that we won't be pushed around anymore? This is more than a contract. It's a strategic pivot, a chance for Canada to reclaim control over its defense future, its industrial base, and its national pride. Today, we're going to break down exactly what's on the table, why it matters, and what it could mean for every Canadian watching this. Now that we've set the stage, let's dig into what Saab is actually offering and why it's a game changer for Canada. Originally, Saab floated the idea of creating 10,000 jobs in Canada if we partnered on their fighter jets. That was impressive on paper, but vague, like a promise without a blueprint. Today, that promise has solidified. Saab is now committing to 12,600 jobs, tied not just to fighter jets, the Gripen, but also to the GlobalEye surveillance aircraft. Here's how it works. Production centers would be built in Ontario and Quebec, Canada's industrial heartland, while a pan-Canadian supplier network would bring in materials and components from coast to coast. This isn't just a few factories. It's an entire ecosystem of industry. Small and medium businesses across the country could supply aluminum, steel, composites, electronics, turning the entire nation into part of one of the largest defense projects Canada has ever seen. And it gets even more interesting with Bombardier. Canada's aerospace powerhouse would build the airframes for the GlobalEye, while Saab installs its advanced surveillance systems and radar technology. That means the planes are co-created on Canadian soil, combining Canadian craftsmanship with Swedish technological expertise. It's not just buying equipment, it's building skills, expertise, and sovereign capability. Sovereign capability is the key phrase here. Canada wouldn't just be buying a plane and hoping it works. It would own the ability to maintain, upgrade, and control these defense systems independently. That's the kind of control no one can take away, and it's exactly the kind of strategic leverage Canada has been missing for decades. In short, Saab's offer isn't just about jets. It's about industry, jobs, expertise, and sovereignty. And understanding this sets the stage for why this deal is about much more than a purchase. It's a potential pivot in Canada's defense and industrial strategy. So, Saab's deal isn't just about jobs or factories, it's about Canada's place in the world. Imagine Canada not only building fighter jets for its own air force, but also exporting them to nations like Ukraine, France, Germany, and other NATO allies. That's tens of thousands of Canadian jobs tied to a global defense network, putting Canada on the map as a serious player in international security. This comes at a time when Europe is dramatically increasing its military spending. A $1.3 trillion procurement wave is coming, and many European nations are actively seeking alternatives to U.S. military hardware. That's where Canada fits in. Factories in Ontario and Quebec could supply not only domestic defense needs, but also meet this massive European demand, building partnerships rather than dependence. And it's not just economics, it's politics. The United States has become increasingly unpredictable. Tariffs, trade threats, and unilateral decisions have created uncertainty for Canadian industry. By partnering with Saab and European allies, Canada could diversify its defense relationships, reducing reliance on a single, unstable partner. Think of it like planting two crops instead of one. If one fails, you still have the other to rely on. By building a European-aligned defense industry at home, Canada strengthens its sovereignty, secures its industrial base, and positions itself as a strategic hub for global defense technology. This is the moment where a simple contract transforms into a national strategy. What was once a question of which fighter jet should we buy becomes how can Canada assert itself, protect its sovereignty, and thrive on the global stage. Of course, No deal this big comes without questions and risks. One of the main concerns is integration with NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. NORAD has been the backbone of continental defense for decades, and some experts worry, if Canada flies Gripen jets while the US operates F-35s, will the systems communicate seamlessly? Could this create gaps in air defense? One credible voice on this is Justin Massey, a political science expert in Montreal. He points out that Canada's current plan, only 16 F-35s, is essentially a token fleet that doesn't contribute much militarily, and he questions whether switching to Gripens might disrupt coordination with US systems. These are fair points and worth considering. But here's the counter. The Gripen is already designed for NATO interoperability. It uses standard NATO data links and can operate alongside aircraft from multiple nations. The concern isn't primarily technical, it's political. The real risk comes if the US chooses to be obstructive because Canada is buying Swedish-made planes. And there's more. If Canada relies entirely on US platforms, it's vulnerable to economic and political pressure. Tariffs, trade disputes, or sudden threats could put Canadian defense and industry at risk. Diversifying with the Gripen and a European partnership reduces that dependency, ensuring Canada maintains control over its own defense capabilities. In short, the risks exist, but they're mostly manageable and politically motivated. The bigger picture shows that independence outweighs the risks, giving Canada sovereignty, resilience, and long-term stability. Now let's look at how Canada's leaders are handling this high-stakes situation. Minister Mélanie Joly, who oversees industry and economic development for Quebec, has been making some very deliberate statements. She emphasizes three pillars: security, sovereignty, and jobs. Every word matters. She's essentially saying, we can't control the United States, but we can control how we invest our own money, which contracts we award, and how we build Canadian industry. This reveals a very calculated strategy. The government isn't rushing to make a decision on the F-35 or Gripen just yet. Instead, they're holding the F-35 deal like a trump card, leverage for negotiations with the US over tariffs, trade agreements, and broader economic pressure. Timing matters. They're likely waiting for the US midterms, the Supreme Court ruling on tariffs, and any potential renegotiation of the CUSMA trade deal. Think of it like playing chess. Canada keeps its strongest piece on the board, not to attack immediately, but to influence the opponent's moves. By waiting, they can see how much power the US president actually has after the elections and adjust their strategy accordingly. It's cautious, yes, but also very tactical. At the same time, the government is signaling to Saab and Europe that Canada is serious about defending its sovereignty and growing its domestic industry. Every statement, every delay, and every carefully worded comment shows that this isn't just about buying planes. It's about positioning Canada for maximum advantage, both economically and strategically. While politicians and companies debate behind closed doors, what do Canadians actually want? Polling gives us a clear picture. According to a recent survey, 43% of Canadians want the federal government to go all in on a fleet of Gripen fighters, fully replacing the F-35s. Another 29% favor a mixed fleet, keeping the 16 F-35s already ordered while adding Gripens. The least popular option? A fleet of only F-35s, with just 13% support. Looking closer, the regional breakdown is even more telling. Quebec and British Columbia are the strongest Gripen supporters, showing minimal appetite for F-35-only plans. Even in Alberta, often seen as the most pro-US conservative province, support for a full F-35 fleet is only 18%. That means more than 4 out of 5 Albertans prefer either Gripens or a mixed approach. Here's what this tells us. Canadians across the country, left and right, urban and rural, overwhelmingly want diversification and sovereignty in defense. This isn't a partisan debate, it's a national consensus. People want jobs, industrial growth, and a government that isn't entirely dependent on US military hardware. Public opinion strengthens the story because it shows that this is not just a political or corporate calculation. It's about what Canadians believe is best for their country, their economy, and their security. The government has the facts, the strategy, and now the public support to make a bold move, if they choose to. When you put all the pieces together, the opportunity is huge. Canada could create 2,600 jobs, build factories in Ontario and Quebec, develop a pan-Canadian supply chain, partner with Bombardier on advanced surveillance aircraft, and become a global hub for fighter jet production. Beyond that, the country could strengthen ties with European allies, tap into their massive defense spending programs, and gain technological sovereignty, the power to control its own defense systems without relying on a single, unpredictable partner. The choice is clear: independence or dependence. Relying solely on the U.S., which has shown unpredictability through tariffs, trade threats, and unilateral decisions, leaves Canada vulnerable. Partnering with Saab and Europe diversifies risk, creates tangible economic benefits, and allows Canada to make its own decisions based on its own interests. So here's where you come in. What should Canada do? Should we ditch the F-35 contract and embrace the Gripen, stick with what's already on the table, or go for a mixed fleet? Your opinion matters. Leave a comment below and share what you think. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss updates as this story develops. And if you want to support this kind of deep reporting, consider joining as a channel member. Every bit helps us keep analyzing and reporting on issues that matter to Canadians and the world. Canada has a historic opportunity here to define its defense, industry, and independence. The question is, will we take it?